shirt. It's like a sweater. My friend Maddie Ziegler has a collection at Fabletics, and you should go support her.
Disney's Snow White remake aftermath has spiraled to unprecedented levels, escalating into a full-blown cultural and cinematic storm that many industry observers had long anticipated, and exactly the type of outcome critics feared. Hollywood executives and cast members are circling like vultures, prepared to place the full burden of the film's struggles squarely on Rachel Zegler's shoulders, framing her as the figure most responsible for what they perceive as the remake's disastrous performance. From the outset, many insiders argued that Zegler had been miscast. When the first images of her as Snow White were released, social media erupted with debate and speculation. Fans and critics alike questioned how she could embody a character so deeply rooted in popular imagination and iconic visual identity. Instead of the warmth, innocence, and charm historically associated with Snow White, Zegler appeared distant, even disconnected, rarely smiling, and seemingly uncomfortable in a role that demands a vibrant, magnetic presence. This perception only fueled the narrative that she was somehow the linchpin of the film's potential downfall. However, the tension surrounding the film extended far beyond casting controversies. A Variety report shed light on a series of behind-the-scenes dramas that amplified the public scrutiny. It began when Zegler posted an Instagram video in support of Palestine shortly after Disney's D23 event, a clip that quickly went viral and garnered nearly 9 million views. The post blindsided Disney executives, who reportedly did not anticipate such a politically charged statement from one of their lead stars. The studio acted quickly, and according to sources, Mark Platt, one of Snow White's principal producers, even flew to New York to confront Zegler in person, demanding that she remove the post. This confrontation, though intended to contain the situation, had unintended consequences, straining professional relationships on set, most notably with Gal Gadot, who portrays the evil queen. Gadot, an Israeli actress, found herself at the center of the backlash, facing online threats that Disney had to take seriously, prompting enhanced security measures at promotional events. Compounding the issue, insiders suggest that Zegler has historically been difficult for producers to manage. Since her breakout role in West Side Story, which earned her a Golden Globe and international recognition, she has been described as a talented but headstrong performer, someone unafraid to voice her opinions, even when they risk controversy. Variety further reported that her political posts sparked heated debate and even personal threats toward Gadot, intensifying the pressure on the cast, crew, and studio alike. Sources indicate that Zegler may not have fully grasped the broader consequences of her social media activity, not just for her own career, but for the film as a whole, her colleagues, and the public perception of the project. The situation illustrates a larger narrative about the pressures of legacy remakes in Hollywood. Studios are often caught between honoring beloved stories and adapting them for modern audiences, and any misstep, whether casting, creative direction, or off-screen behavior, can become amplified by social media and fan scrutiny. In the case of Snow White, the combination of high expectations, political controversy, and a young actress under immense pressure created a perfect storm, making the film's struggles emblematic of the challenges studios face when balancing creative vision, corporate oversight, and personal expression. As the story continues to unfold, critics, fans, and insiders alike are debating whether Zegler is being unfairly scapegoated or if she genuinely bears responsibility for what could be considered a major misfire in Disney's illustrious history. Ultimately, the Snow White saga is about far more than a single performer's choices. It reflects the precarious balance between celebrity influence, public perception, and the high-stakes nature of global entertainment. The fallout demonstrates just how volatile the world of major studio productions has become, where every social media post, casting decision, and public statement can ripple outward to affect millions of viewers worldwide, shaping not only the success of a single film but the legacy of one of the most iconic fairy tales in cinematic history. Her remarks, however, were far from the only flashpoint in the Snow White remake controversy. Following Donald Trump's election victory, Zegler took to Instagram to voice her deep frustration, expressing what she described as her sense of despair over the political landscape. She lamented her inability to speak freely, framing the next 4 years as a period of hostility and claiming that Trump supporters fundamentally failed to understand the meaning of peace. What might have been a private opinion quickly became a public flashpoint, In a single post, Zegler managed to provoke outrage across the political spectrum. Her outspoken anti-Trump stance infuriated conservative audiences, while other comments, particularly those regarding Palestine, drew scrutiny from certain liberal groups who viewed her remarks as overly polarizing. The combination of these political statements compounded an already precarious situation for the film, which was already facing criticism for straying from the original Snow White narrative. Fans and critics debated her casting choices, her performance, and her public persona, creating a perfect storm in which creative decisions and personal expression became inseparably intertwined with public reception. The impact of these controversies is reflected not only in public perception but also in the stark statistics surrounding the film's reception. User ratings have plummeted to a dismal 1.8 out of 10, placing Snow White lower than even the widely criticized Dragon Ball Evolution, a film long remembered for its failure to capture its source material. The box office performance is similarly disastrous. The movie grossed only $82 million globally in its opening weekend, a staggering disappointment for a production reportedly costing between $250 and $350 million. To put this into context, Snow White earned $34 million less than Joker, a film that was widely regarded as a commercial letdown in its own right. Further complicating matters, Variety reports that the production costs may have been even higher than originally estimated, with some sources suggesting an actual expenditure of $420 million, making it more expensive to produce than the Joker sequel. A representative from a rival studio did not hesitate to voice the industry consensus. A live-action adaptation of Disney's most iconic animated film, reshot and budgeted at such astronomical levels, should never open to a mere fraction of expectations. By all accounts, this should have been an automatic blockbuster. Yet the reality was starkly different, highlighting just how vulnerable even the most legendary franchises can be when public sentiment, critical reception, and star controversies collide. Adding to the complexity is the perceived double standard in how the leads have been treated. While Zegler faced intense criticism for her pro-Palestine comments, Gal Gadot reportedly made her own remarks regarding the Israel-Hamas conflict without facing equivalent scrutiny or backlash. Industry observers and media commentators alike have highlighted this inconsistency, raising questions about how Hollywood applies its rules and expectations unevenly depending on an actor's public stance or celebrity status. This perception of contradictory treatment only added fuel to the ongoing discourse surrounding the film, drawing attention not only to Zegler's actions but also to broader debates about accountability, diversity, and fairness in the entertainment industry. In combination, these factors, political controversy, social media backlash, miscasting critiques, creative deviations from the classic story, and inconsistent treatment of cast members, have created an unprecedented storm around the Snow White remake. The ramifications extend far beyond box office numbers. They speak to the fragile ecosystem of modern Hollywood, where every casting decision, creative choice, and off-screen action can rapidly become global news. The film's struggles underscore a sobering truth. Even projects with decades of built-in goodwill and a globally recognized brand are not immune to failure when controversy, mismanagement, and public scrutiny intersect. For Disney, the Snow White remake has become a cautionary tale about the delicate balance between honoring legacy properties, navigating star power, and managing audience expectations in a hyper-connected world where every comment, image, and decision can ripple outward with unforeseen consequences. Ultimately, the film's missteps serve as a vivid illustration of the modern challenges facing blockbuster filmmaking, demonstrating that in today's climate, reputation, perception, and politics can weigh as heavily on a film's fate as talent, storytelling, or production value. Research suggests that Rachel Zegler's reputation as a challenging figure in Hollywood did not emerge solely from the controversy surrounding her Palestine remarks. Rather, insiders indicate that her reputation for being outspoken and sometimes difficult had been building long before that incident. During the production of Snow White, she reportedly expressed public frustration over not being invited to the 2022 Oscars, despite having starred in West Side Story, a film nominated for Best Picture. According to sources, she had been scheduled to shoot scenes in London, and Disney executives initially refused to allow her to attend the ceremony. After she voiced her grievances publicly, the Academy ultimately provided her with a ticket, But the episode further cemented a narrative of Zegler as entitled or impatient, drawing scrutiny from fans and industry veterans alike. This perception was reinforced by her interactions with Steven Spielberg, the renowned filmmaker who discovered her and gave her the breakthrough role that launched her career. Critics argue that Zegler was essentially handed a golden ticket to fame, a chance that countless aspiring actors would have embraced without complaint, but she seemed unable or unwilling to fully recognize the opportunity, creating the impression that she struggled to remain humble in the face of unprecedented success. Industry veterans often advise newcomers that Hollywood success is fleeting and heavily dependent on cultivating and maintaining positive relationships with influential producers and executives. By openly challenging Disney and making politically charged statements, Zegler has been accused of violating this unspoken but widely understood guideline, risking her professional standing and future opportunities. Observers have also drawn comparisons with Gina Carano, who faced intense backlash in 2020 over controversial remarks while working on The Mandalorian. Some commentators note that Zegler, who reportedly criticized Carano at the time, now finds herself in a position arguably even more precarious than Carano's, highlighting the unpredictable and often unforgiving nature of public perception in Hollywood. This situation underscores the fact that moral and social standards in the public eye are fluid. Actions that are deemed acceptable, or even praiseworthy, at one moment can quickly be reinterpreted as mistakes or missteps.
I love to wear their wide-legged jeans, and I found a light wash today, so you can't see.
They're too long. This has never happened with...
Despite these challenges and criticisms, there are signs that public sentiment toward Zegler is beginning to shift in her favor. Numerous social media users have started to defend her, applauding her for standing by her values despite intense pressure from some of Hollywood's most powerful figures. A notable viral tweet praised her for showing backbone and integrity by refusing to delete her post supporting Palestine, even when confronted by industry executives. Others have expressed empathy for her situation, noting that at just 23 years old, she may not have fully understood the potential repercussions of making politically charged statements in such a high-profile position. These perspectives reflect a growing acknowledgement of the pressures faced by young actors navigating fame, social responsibility, and the expectations of an industry that often scrutinizes personal opinions as harshly as professional performance. Zegler's experience, therefore, serves as both a cautionary tale and a case study in modern celebrity, illustrating how quickly public perception can shift, how youthful inexperience can collide with global visibility, and how the interplay between personal conviction, media narratives, and Hollywood power dynamics can shape, or potentially derail, a burgeoning career. Some commentators argue that Rachel Zegler is being unfairly scapegoated for Disney's Snow White remake, a project that many believe was fundamentally destined to face challenges long before her involvement. These observers suggest that, even without her political statements or publicized missteps, the film confronted basic creative problems from the outset. Deviations from the beloved original narrative, a screenplay that struggled to balance nostalgia with modern reinterpretation, and the growing fatigue of audiences toward live-action Disney remakes. In this view, the project's failure was almost inevitable, and Zegler has become a convenient target for blame. However, critics of this perspective emphasize that at 23, Zegler is fully an adult, entrusted with one of the most high-profile roles in contemporary cinema, and should therefore be aware of the potential consequences of her public actions. Framing her as too young to understand or implying that she lacks maturity diminishes her agency and responsibility. She knowingly chose to express her political views in the context of a project with massive cultural visibility and financial stakes, and the repercussions of that choice are likely to reverberate throughout her career for years to come. Hollywood, observers note, operates much like a high school social hierarchy, an environment that is extremely risk-averse and sensitive to perception. Associations with controversy, whether political, personal, or professional, can damage one's reputation and limit future opportunities. Actors labeled as difficult, unpredictable, or potentially harmful to a project's financial performance often face hesitation from studios and collaborators alike. In Zegler's case, her outspoken nature, combined with perceived interpersonal conflicts on set, has created a perfect storm of reputational risk. The speed and decisiveness of the studio's response have been particularly telling, Reports indicate that Disney has already begun removing promotional materials for Snow White from theaters and other marketing channels, even though the film had only recently premiered. This rapid disassembly implies that the studio may be willing to write the project off entirely as a financial and cultural loss, signaling just how unforgiving the industry can be when high-stakes projects underperform. Industry insiders also suggest that these events may shape future contractual agreements, with studios increasingly likely to implement strict social media and political restrictions for actors during promotion periods. The era in which performers could freely express political opinions while serving as the public face of multimillion-dollar productions may be coming to an end. Complicating matters further are reported tensions between Zegler and her co-star Gal Gadot, which have allegedly worsened over time. Sources claim that a remark Zegler made at an Oscars-related function, allegedly referring to Gadot as a specialist pageant queen, inflamed existing frictions and created an almost impenetrable barrier between the two leads. This interpersonal strife, coupled with the film's poor reception, has turned Snow White into yet another expensive box office disappointment for Disney. With projected global earnings unlikely to surpass $200 million, a stark contrast to the film's reported production costs, Disney faces a significant financial setback, occurring at a time when the studio has already struggled to align with evolving audience expectations and market demands. Perhaps the most striking aspect of the Snow White debacle is how quickly Hollywood is prepared to distance itself from talented individuals who fail to conform to unspoken norms or deviate from the carefully managed image that studios expect. Zegler's experience underscores the delicate, high-stakes balance that young actors must maintain between personal expression, professional responsibility, and public scrutiny. It demonstrates how swiftly social media backlash, political controversy, interpersonal conflict, and studio strategy can converge to create long-lasting consequences for a career that, only months earlier, seemed destined for stardom. Ultimately, this saga reveals the precarious nature of modern Hollywood fame, highlighting both the opportunities and risks faced by young performers navigating an industry in which talent alone is no longer sufficient. Perception, compliance, and strategic awareness are equally critical to long-term success. Several industry observers have noted that the most enduring and successful figures in Hollywood often take a strategic approach to social media, either avoiding it entirely or maintaining accounts carefully managed by experienced public relations teams. Actors like Samuel L. Jackson and Elizabeth Olsen, for example, have sustained long, stable careers partly because they keep their personal opinions largely private or ensure that any statements released to the public are meticulously curated and calculated. This cautious approach is not merely about personal preference, it is a recognized business strategy in an industry where stars often serve as the face of multi-billion-dollar projects. Expressing divisive political or social opinions can alienate substantial portions of a potential audience. Even if such posts attract thousands, or even tens of thousands, of supportive reactions, those online affirmations rarely translate into tangible ticket sales or financial returns. The disastrous box office performance of Snow White has highlighted this reality, illustrating how quickly controversies surrounding a lead actor can overshadow the film itself and affect its commercial success. Moreover, the situation has sparked broader conversations about the increasingly political nature of entertainment. Many viewers are expressing frustration with television shows and films that appear to serve more as platforms for political commentary than as vehicles for storytelling or escapism. This fatigue transcends traditional ideological divides. People from various backgrounds and political affiliations are voicing a desire for entertainment that brings audiences together rather than dividing them. The appetite is for stories that prioritize narrative, character development, and emotional engagement over ideology or messaging. Within this climate, Zegler's path forward appears particularly challenging. While some segments of the public praise her for standing by her principles despite pressure from powerful industry figures, this support is unlikely to translate into the blockbuster roles or career-defining performances that initially established her reputation as one of Hollywood's rising stars. Industry analysts suggest that Zegler may increasingly be relegated to supporting roles or smaller-scale productions, potentially portraying side characters rather than central protagonists. Beyond the professional implications, there are significant personal and psychological consequences associated with such high-profile public scrutiny. For a young actor who experienced rapid success, going from being hailed as a future superstar to becoming a cautionary tale can be emotionally destabilizing. The combination of public criticism, reduced professional opportunities, and the constant pressure to maintain an impeccable public image can lead to heightened stress, anxiety, and depression. These mental health challenges underscore the human cost of fame, particularly for actors thrust into intense public and media scrutiny at a young age. Perhaps most revealing is how the saga of Zegler and Snow White exposes the contradictions within Hollywood itself. The industry presents itself as progressive, socially conscious, and values-driven, often celebrating authenticity and moral courage in its stars. Yet, in practice, this authenticity is tolerated only when it aligns with the studio's financial and reputational interests. Talented performers who deviate from established norms or express opinions outside of these boundaries are often marginalized professionally, even as segments of the public applaud their courage. For young actors like Zegler, this creates a nearly impossible balancing act, maintaining personal integrity and authenticity while navigating an industry that prioritizes compliance, marketability, and the avoidance of controversy. In today's increasingly polarized media environment, the stakes have never been higher, demonstrating that in modern Hollywood, even exceptional talent cannot fully shield a performer from the repercussions of public perception, political engagement, or social media missteps. The Snow White controversy thus serves as both a cautionary tale and a case study in the complex, often unforgiving dynamics that define contemporary stardom. The response of Disney to the Snow White failure may signal a significant shift in how studios will manage talent in the future. The era in which major stars could exercise near-total freedom of expression while serving as the face of billion-dollar franchises may be coming to an end. It is increasingly likely that social media restrictions and contractual provisions will become standard practice, potentially including outright bans on political commentary during periods of film promotion or major project campaigns. The issue is complex, however, because neither studios nor audiences have fully coherent or consistent standards regarding what is acceptable. Disney, for example, has been criticized for selectively applying its own criteria to determine which political remarks from actors are deemed appropriate, reflecting the studio's balancing act between safeguarding its brand and managing high-profile talent. At the same time, viewers who claim to support freedom of expression often disregard that principle when an actor's statements conflict with their personal beliefs, highlighting the double standards inherent in public reactions. Perhaps the clearest indication that Disney views Snow White as irreparable comes from the studio itself. Reports indicate that promotional materials and advertising campaigns have already been removed from public spaces, even though the film was only recently released. Such rapid dismantling of marketing infrastructure suggests that Disney has largely written off the project as a failure and is actively attempting to distance itself from the financial and reputational fallout. For Disney, this is yet another expensive misstep during a period that once seemed dominated by the studio's successes with Star Wars, Marvel, and its live-action remake strategy. Audience fatigue, rising competition, and an increasingly critical public have collectively undermined the company's dominance, and Snow White, a remake of the very film that helped establish Disney as a cultural and corporate powerhouse, was intended to be a guaranteed success. Its failure is therefore particularly alarming, not only for the studio's bottom line but also for investors and stakeholders who once relied on Disney's consistent ability to generate massive returns from its legacy properties. Beyond the immediate financial implications, the Snow White controversy illuminates the evolving relationship between audiences and celebrities in the social media age. Today, performers have unparalleled platforms to share opinions, advocate for causes, and engage directly with fans. Yet these platforms come with significant risks. Industry insiders note that the most successful actors often maintain a careful balance, preserving a degree of privacy and separation between their public and private identities. This discretion is increasingly recognized as a key factor in career longevity, allowing performers to navigate a highly scrutinized industry while avoiding controversies that could jeopardize professional opportunities. Audiences, it seems, are primarily interested in entertainment itself. They are more likely to forgive subpar storytelling or mediocre performances than to excuse perceived political overreach or moral posturing. Fatigue with content that feels more like activism than narrative is increasingly crossing political and cultural boundaries, signaling that viewers want stories that entertain, engage, and unite rather than divide. For aspiring actors observing these developments, the lesson is increasingly clear. In an industry where hundreds of talented individuals compete for each opportunity, any misstep, be it public statements, social media miscalculations, or interpersonal conflicts, can have lasting consequences. Navigating Hollywood successfully requires not only talent and charisma but also an acute awareness of timing, messaging, and the expectations of both executives and audiences. The Snow White saga, therefore, offers a cautionary tale about the perils of high-profile visibility, the consequences of political expression, and the delicate balance performers must maintain to achieve long-term success in an unforgiving and highly competitive environment.